How are you? You beautiful people. You all look so serious today. Let me tell you a little story, a funny one actually, about the time some very important, very frightened people went looking for answers about you and found out the punchline was already written. You see, the witch doctor down in Mexico, he didn't just mention you in passing. Oh, no, no, no. He told them precisely what kind of storm they'd invited to their doorstep the moment they decided, hey, to make you their problem. And the look on his face when he said it, that wasn't fear. That was the expression of a man who'd spent his whole life rehearsing for an audience that never showed up. And then, there you were, the headliner, the act he'd only ever heard described in rituals so buried, so secret, most civilized folks don't even know the theater exists. Now you have to appreciate what actually unfolded down there. In that dusty little village outside Oaxaca, where the hills bend into each other like old conspirators, whispering over a shared secret, and the air tastes like smoke and wet clay. They went to him, these people, these planners, these meticulous little architects of your misery. They'd been lurking in your periphery, cataloging your habits, harvesting scraps of your life, like magpies, hoarding shiny things they couldn't quite figure out how to spend. And they asked him, who is this person? They expected confirmation, a nice, neat label, something they could file away. They thought he'd say, oh yes, a nuisance, a mosquito, swat accordingly. They thought they were going to hear that you were a complication they could manage, a knot they could simply cut. But what he told them, it froze them from the inside out. And I don't mean a little chill, a little goosebump on a Tuesday. I mean the kind of cold that starts in the marrow. You know, that deep architectural cold. And radiates outward until your hands feel like they belong to someone who died a week ago. Hatful sensation, really. He told them you are not someone who tripped into power like a tourist stumbling into the wrong neighborhood. He told them you are not someone who built muscle through suffering and simply learned to swing back because the world kept swinging first. He told them what they were tangling with was something ancient, something that had been threading through the world long before they ever drew up their little blueprints, long before their organizations even had names. He told them you move with a gravity that most people never brush up against in their entire lives. And the only reason you are still here, still breathing, still upright in the face of every wrecking ball they've launched at you, is because something far larger than them, far older than their petty little chess matches, has been standing guard over you since before you could even form a thought worth remembering. Now here is the part, oh, this is good, this is really good, the part that burrowed into their skulls like a song you can't stop humming. He said you carry something that cannot be snuffed out, that every time they try to smother your flame, it flares hotter, and every time they try to drown you, you surface again with more fury than before. Isn't that poetic? Almost makes you want to laugh. They don't know what to do with that. Because in all their years of doing very ugly things to very unlucky people, they have never run into someone like you. And look, I know. We toss that phrase around like confetti at a parade nobody asked for. I've never seen anything like you. Sure, but in this particular case, it's not flattery, it's a diagnosis. You want the truth? It's not in what we were just saying. Most people rot. Anomalies evolve. Which are you? Find your answers in my book. Grab it from the description or pinned comment of this video. Anyway, back to the madness. They've handled powerful people before. They've handled fighters, resistors, people who made things temporarily inconvenient before eventually being ground down under the sheer tonnage of what was pressing on them. But you're not pushing back because you're hard-headed or because you've got a point to prove. You are pushing back because it is constitutionally impossible for you to do otherwise. It's not a stance you adopted. It's not a philosophy you workshopped over coffee. It's what you are. It's as involuntary as a heartbeat. You walk through a room and people register it, even when they can't articulate why. They pick up this frequency, this tremor, of something that doesn't harmonize with the rest of the furniture. And some of them lean toward it, curious, magnetized, while others recoil from it. The ones who recoil, those are the ones with basements they don't want anyone inspecting, closets they've nailed shut from the inside. You don't have to introduce yourself for them to know the audit has arrived. They feel you coming. And the more tangled up they are, the stronger the signal. There's a reason they've been running reconnaissance on you. A reason they've been greasing palms for intelligence. A reason they've been consulting every mystic, medium, and back-alley oracle who might whisper the secret to handling someone like you. They are terrified, and they have never, not truly, not like this, been terrified before. You know that phenomenon? When you step into a space and something recalibrates, when eyes drift toward you before you've uttered a syllable and there's this peculiar hush that settles over everything like snow on a battlefield. That's not your imagination playing tricks. That's not nerves or self-consciousness or any of the polite little excuses you've been feeding yourself for years to make it make sense. That's people detecting what you are before their brains can catch up and categorize it. The ones who can't explain it, they tend to get hostile, uncomfortable. Because human beings, generally speaking, don't respond well to things they can't fit into their neat little filing cabinets. But the ones who can explain it, the ones who've devoted their lives to studying the invisible architecture of this world, they respond differently. They respond with recognition. They respond with something that looks a lot like reverence, and sometimes, it looks a whole lot like dread. But either way, they are not confused about what just walked through the door. So when I tell you that a witch doctor in Mexico looked at your situation and said, "You are a walking reckoning. I'm not being theatrical." Well, okay, I'm always theatrical. But that's beside the point. I'm telling you that a man who dedicated his entire existence to reading the deep currents of this world examined your frequency and saw something he'd only encountered in crumbling manuscripts, something whispered about in ceremonies conducted far, far from polite company. He saw someone who was selected, not the way people get selected for committees or promotions or jury duty, but the way certain souls are selected to stand in the doorway between what's known and what's unknowable, to hold open a passage for forces that most people couldn't stomach even as a concept. You are here for something specific. You didn't just happen to be born. You didn't just happen to survive every demolition crew that's been sent after you. You didn't just happen to develop this unnerving talent for reading people's masks, for sensing the rot under the fresh paint, even when the surface gleams like new. All of that, every bit of it, was rehearsal for something you haven't even fully stepped onto the stage for yet. Now this next part gets personal, so I want you to take a breath with me. Sit with what I'm about to say and see if it vibrates somewhere behind your ribs. Have you noticed, really noticed, that the people who've tried hardest to destroy you, the ones who went all in on taking you apart, have always ended up in worse wreckage than you? Not marginally worse, spectacularly worse, catastrophically, hilariously worse. Have you noticed that every scheme aimed at sabotaging you has somehow, without any engineering on your part, detonated in the schemer's own lap? Boom, that's not luck. That's not the universe rolling dice in your favor. That's a pattern, a rhythm, a drum beat that's been keeping time your entire life. And it's not because you're cleverer or more cunning than every adversary who's crossed your path. Although between us, you absolutely are those things too. It's because there is a shield around you that has nothing to do with anything you consciously built. It comes from the origin point itself, from whatever sent you here in the first place, and it has been deflecting every blow that was never meant to land. They tried to shatter you when you were small. They tried to make you feel invisible, negligible, like nothing you touched would ever carry weight. They tried to convince you that you were too raw, too electric, too overwhelming for the room. And you bought it. For a while, you bought it, because you hadn't yet been handed the instruction manual that explained your sensitivity wasn't a defect. It was a conductor. Your intensity was the voltage itself. You were never too much for people. You were too much for the people who couldn't survive the honesty you represented, simply by existing. Those people, the ones who shrank you, the ones who worked overtime to dim your wattage. They weren't just being unkind. They were attempting to disconnect something they recognized instinctively as a threat to their comfort, their grip, their meticulously staged illusions about who they were and what they were doing here. They could sense, even if you couldn't yet, that you saw through them. And being seen, that's the one thing people like that cannot tolerate. And that brings me to the chapter of this story that's going to rearrange something inside you. So pay attention. The witch doctor told them that you are not merely here to endure. You are not just here to tiptoe through existence, absorbing the least possible damage. You are here to unveil what's been buried, to slice through the fog that's been keeping people locked in loops of suffering and confusion and, let's call them what they are, lies. All of them. Every flavor. That is the reckoning. It's not that you're fated for some glittering future of fame or fortune or power, in the way those words usually get thrown around like cheap currency. It's that you're fated to be the one who walks into rooms full of comfortable deception and quietly, without any trumpet fanfare, lays bare the truth that's been crouching in plain view the whole time. You do this without effort. You do it by simply occupying space, by posing the questions nobody else thought to pose, by refusing to swallow the rehearsed answers everyone else has been trained to accept without chewing. They told him how you've been dismantling their blueprints without even knowing the blueprints existed. They told him how every structure they tried to erect that ran contrary to something bigger and better for the world kept collapsing, and how you always seemed to be somewhere in the vicinity when the scaffolding fell. They told him about this ability of yours to read through people, to detect dishonesty, even when it's wearing its very best costume, and how that particular talent has cost them more than they care to confess. And the witch doctor just listened, nodded, and eventually, with that serene stillness that belongs to people who have witnessed far too much to be rattled by anything anymore. He told them they were waging a war they'd already lost. He told them they should have left you alone, should have let you walk your road without stepping into it. Because now that they've made the mistake of engaging you directly, now that they've cast themselves as your opposition, they've triggered something in you that was sleeping before. Now you're not just carrying that power like luggage, you're conscious of it. And that changes the entire equation. What they didn't grasp, and what the witch doctor tried so patiently to spell out, though I don't think they truly digested it, is that the force coursing through you isn't a weapon you brandish. It's a current you conduct. Like a river. You don't aim it at people. It simply moves through you and does whatever needs doing. And sometimes what needs doing is peeling back someone's corruption, or dismantling a machine that's been grinding people down for far too long. And you don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to be vindictive. You don't need to draft elaborate revenge blueprints or strategize your way towards settling scores with every person who's wronged you. All you need to do is keep walking your road. Keep anchored to what you know in the deepest basement of yourself, and let the current do its work. It will shield you. It will sweep your road clean. It will attend to the people who've been building barricades in your way. And it will do it in a fashion that leaves zero ambiguity about who was orchestrating what all along. And here, oh, here is the punchline they really didn't want to hear. They cannot stop you. They've exhausted every option. They've leveraged their influence to barricade your opportunities. They've weaponized their connections to turn allies against you. They've deployed their resources to shadow your every move and forecast your next step. They've even dabbled in the supernatural, the kind of methods that ordinary well-adjusted people don't even know are on the menu. Rituals, bindings, workings designed to shackle someone's power and leave them inert. And none of it has stuck. Every time they tried to chain you, the chains snapped back onto their own wrists. Every time they tried to poison your well, the poison found its way home. With compound interest. They cannot fathom why, because they don't comprehend that you are operating from a tier of authority that entirely sidesteps the infrastructure they're using against you. It's not that you overpower them. It's that you aren't even performing in the same theater. You're on a level above, and the stage directions they depend on, they simply don't apply to you anymore. Consider, really consider, what it took for you to arrive at this exact coordinates in your life. Everything you've weathered, everything you've outlasted, everything you've had to shed like a snake, leaving behind a skin that no longer fit, in order to become who you are in this moment. You didn't get here by accident. You didn't get here because you were fortunate or because your opponents just happened to suffer a convenient string of blunders. You got here because there is something in you that refuses to be extinguished, refuses to be compressed, refuses to surrender even when surrender would have been the path of least resistance. You got here because the current inside you understood it had work to do, and it was never going to let you walk away before the work was finished. You got here because you were, and you are, meant to be here. Not just existing, fulfilling a purpose that was drafted for you before you drew your first breath. Let me take you back to that witch doctor for one final moment. Because what he said next, this is the part that truly matters. He looked them dead in the eye and he said, You do not understand what you are dealing with. This is not someone you can manipulate, intimidate, or disassemble. This is someone who has already walked straight through the furnace and emerged carrying more light than they had when they entered. This is someone who has already faced their own shadow and absorbed it, who knows precisely what they are capable of and precisely what they will never compromise on. This is someone who carries truth in their skeleton, and truth is the only solvent that can dissolve everything you've constructed. They were stunned, genuinely, comically stunned, because in all their years of consulting him, in all the questions they'd ever brought about every adversary they'd ever tangled with, he had never, not once, spoken about anyone the way he spoke about you. There is a reason for that. There is a reason this particular witch doctor, who has witnessed more than most minds can even warehouse, reacted to you the way he did. It's because you are not simply a powerful person. You are a powerful person who has been ignited in a way that happens once in a generation, perhaps less frequently than that. You are someone who arrived in this world carrying a mission you are only now beginning to decode. And everything that has happened to you, everything, has been preparation for the moment you would finally step into that mission with both feet. The ambushes, the betrayals, the losses, the moments you were certain you couldn't take another step forward, all of it was sculpting you, tempering you into the instrument you were always designed to be. Every time you believed you were being demolished, you were actually being assembled. Every time you thought you'd lost the road, you were being rerouted onto the correct one. Every time you believed you'd reached your limit, you were being shown that your capacity stretches further than you ever dreamed. So now, here you stand at the threshold, staring into a future that's been holding a seat for you. And I know it's frightening. I know it's staggering. I know there's a piece of you that wants to retreat to the time before, when you didn't know any of this, when you could simply drift through your days without feeling the gravitational pull of what you're carrying. But you can't go back. You know that. Something has shifted inside you, something foundational, and you can't unfeel it. It hums through you every single day. You can't pretend anymore that you're just an ordinary person navigating ordinary circumstances. You can't pretend anymore that the patterns repeating around you are just random scatter. You can't pretend anymore that the shielding you've experienced is merely good fortune. You know the truth now, and knowing the truth means you have to move with it. The people who went to the witch doctor, the ones scrambling for a strategy to neutralize you, they thought they were going to receive a blueprint, a vulnerability they could leverage, a crack they could pry open, and finally bring the whole structure down. Instead, they received a warning. Instead, they received the most devastating news imaginable, that you are guarded by something beyond their reach, that you are traveling in concert with something that dwarfs their little conspiracies entirely, and that every maneuver they attempt to halt you will only accelerate the very outcome they're desperate to prevent. They went hunting for a method to defeat you, and they discovered there is no method. They went searching for a gap in your defenses, and they learned your defenses aren't forged from anything they can fracture. They went looking for someone to show them how to outrun the consequences of what they've done, and they were told, there is no exit, not because you are going to chase them down, no, but because your very presence has already initiated a process of correction that cannot be undone. You feel that, don't you? In the still moments, when the static of daily life quiets down. You feel something shifting. You feel the ground reconfiguring beneath you. You feel yourself being carried in a direction you never charted, but that feels more inevitable, more right, than anything you've ever known. That's the reckoning stirring awake inside you. Now, why so serious? Ha 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 ha.